What's happening? Good Wednesday morning to all of you. Happy Hump Day. Thanks for joining me as always. It is very much appreciated. Before we get started, don't forget to like and comment on this video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you love the content that we do here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the Patriots on the Nick Cattle Show, especially at 11 a.m. You all know the time. Rate and review Spotify, Apple Pods, if you like or maybe love the podcast over there. And don't forget, Spotify, Apple Pods, people, you can always matriculate yourself to the YouTube page to give us that thumbs up, helps the algorithm, and subscribe to the channel. All right, Brandon Aiyuk has requested a trade from the San Francisco 49ers. Josina Anderson tweeted yesterday that the Patriots have called the 49ers within the last couple of weeks to gauge the Brandon Aiyuk market. Patriots interested in Aiyuk, and at the time, let's keep an eye on that. At the time, the Niners told the Patriots that Aiyuk was not going to be traded. They wanted him, they're going to keep him, etc. Now, the first thing I take from this is great news. The Patriots are still hunting for that bona fide, legitimate wide receiver one. They went after Calvin Ridley during the offseason. Many of us don't really see Ridley as a 1A guy. He would obviously be 1A here in New England, but throughout the game, I don't know how many people would tell you that Calvin Ridley is a true number 1A kind of receiver. But the Patriots, they tossed $40 million guaranteed his way. He said thanks, but no thanks. Got ridiculously overpaid. Good for him by the Tennessee Titans. He is now in Tennessee. But they were willing to spend the money on Calvin Ridley. And they're obviously willing to spend the money on Aiyuk. You don't place the phone call to the Niners unless you're willing to pay the money it's going to take to keep him here in New England. And the kind of money that it would take to keep Aiyuk here in the long term is the tippity top of the market, if not right underneath Justin Jefferson. So the first takeaway is Elliott Wolf, this organization, they understand they need a number one wide receiver, and they continue to go after a number one wide receiver. Now, I think it's very unlikely that the Niners will trade Aiyuk. I was working out in Sacramento during the Deebo Samuel situation, very similar to this. So I think it's very unlikely that Aiyuk is traded. Deebo Samuel himself, he's aging, right? The wear and tear. I don't think the Niners see him as the long-term answer anymore. They go out, they draft Ricky Pearsall. So they know that Deebo's time is coming close to an end. Of course, they have the contractual leverage on Aiyuk. He's a fifth-year player. He's going to get fined a ton of money the more time that he misses. They can also, if he comes back and plays this year, they have the ability to hang the franchise tag over his head. So they have all the contractual leverage in this case, as is usually the circumstance in the NFL, because teams, owners, they usually have the ultimate leverage in contracts because they can guarantee the money, they can throw the bonuses, but they have the ultimate control because if players want to truly hold out, they lose money while they hold out, which is not what they want to do. The exact opposite of what they want, right? They're holding out because they want more money. So why would you cost yourself money when you want more of it? So the Niners have the contractual leverage. They have the 2025 franchise tag leverage. They know Deebo's not the same guy. If you look at John Lynch's history in San Francisco, he tends to take contracts up until the bitter end. You know, he did this with Bosa. He did this with Deebo. He is probably going to do it with Brock Purdy. It's just the way he does business. He gets up to the very, very line, and then he says, okay, let's get this done. He's not afraid to continue to push the player. He understands that he has that leverage, and he utilizes it to the best of his ability leading his football team, and he puts players in difficult positions to say yes or no to certain contracts. So Lynch is going to do that with Aiyuk because that's what he's done pretty much every single time he has faced a decision like this one in San Francisco. And the Niners have a Super Bowl goal. That is their aspiration. They were there last year. They want to get back there. They know that getting rid of Aiyuk hurts their chances of getting back to the Super Bowl. There is one way that Aiyuk could get out. One way. Quietly quitting. That's become a thing, right? People talk about quietly quitting. Aiyuk can quietly quit. He can become the ultimate distraction. He can loaf around at practice. He can give the team a hard time. He can demand more targets from Brock Purdy. He can set up a me versus him thing with Deebo Samuel because Deebo wants a new contract. He knows that his contract has an out after this season. So Deebo's looking for a new deal. Aiyuk can turn it into me versus Deebo, which would be incredibly uncomfortable in that locker room. So Aiyuk could quietly quit. He could make it a big-time issue with the Niners organization and become a huge distraction and try to get in the way of getting back to the Super Bowl. He can do that. He can go full-on nuclear if he wants. But again, I don't think he's going to be dealt. And here's how I feel with the Patriots. There is no reason to overpay for Brandon Aiyuk. As much as I love him, as much as many of you like his game or love his game, there's no reason to overpay for him. Not at this juncture. Not with the situation you have. If the Niners want a first-round pick, I said this going back weeks ago, and I still stand by this, I'm not giving up the 2025 first-round pick for Aiyuk. That pick could end up being a top-5 pick. And giving up a top-5 pick along with top-of-the-market money is way too much of an overpay. Way too much. And you should not be overpaying at this point right now. You are rebuilding. That's the truth of this situation. We would all love the Patriots to be an 11-12 win team. We would all want them to make the push towards the playoffs. Shoot, we'd all love them to make a playoff run, right? But we have to be realistic. And I'm sure Elliott Wolf is realistic. If there's an opportunity that makes sense, then you take advantage of it. Then you pull the trigger. I'm not sold that trading a first-round pick in next year's draft and paying Aiyuk the money that he wants, which is more than $27 million per season, I'm not sold that doing both of those things for the player makes sense for this organization, for this franchise right now, in this moment on July 17th, 2024. You are rebuilding, and to give up an asset like that first-round pick in next year's draft, too valuable of an asset for you, because you can draft a blue-chip kind of guy with that pick, and that blue-chip kind of guy is going to be on a rookie-scaled contract for the next 4 or 5 years. That is tremendous value for a team that's looking at certain positions that they might need to replenish that are critical to the operation. You know, you might need a left tackle if Chooks doesn't work out. You might need a defensive edge player. What happens if Judon, you don't get this deal figured out, Judon walks? Keion White. What happens if he unfortunately does not fulfill the potential? He falls short of expectations. You have Uche on a 1-year deal. Jennings is a good player, but he's not a great game-changing kind of edge. So you might need a defensive edge going into next offseason, if not 2. I mean, if Keion White doesn't fulfill that potential and Judon's gone and Uche's gone, you're likely looking at having to go out and get 2 edges instead of just 1. And I'm talking about 2 top-tier edges, 2 guys that you can play right away. And having that top 5 pick, top 10 pick in next year's draft can help you address one of those 2 critical needs, whether it's left tackle if Chooks and Caden Wallace don't work out, or it's edge if Judon is gone and White doesn't fulfill that potential and fall short of the expectations. If you're closer to 10 than you are to 1 in the draft next year, then maybe you even think about a wide receiver if somebody truly pops. Maybe you just draft the receiver with that pick in next year's draft. I know a lot of people wanted the Patriots to draft Marvin Harrison Jr. this year, right? Well, maybe you think about doing something like that next season, next year's draft. Maybe you have a top 5 pick. You're not in love with any of those players, but you can trade that pick, drop a few slots down, still get a top 10 to 12 guy while accumulating more picks like a second-round pick and maybe a future first, whatever you get. Now you're getting those assets, and it makes it easier to either draft that wide receiver or go out and acquire that wide receiver. And we talked about T. Higgins on Monday. T. Higgins is walking into free agency. So how much better is Aiyuk than Higgins, and what is that cost difference? If you can get Higgins just for money, would it not be easier to go out there and get a Higgins next offseason and just pay him the cash that he wants versus trading a first-round pick and paying Aiyuk the cash. It's not Aiyuk versus Higgins, right? It's not a 1 versus 1. It is the opportunity cost. What do you have to give up to get each guy? To get Aiyuk, you're giving up at least 1 pick. If it's a first-round pick, I think it's 1 pick. If it's not a first-round pick, you might have to give up multiple picks. If you give up a second-round pick in 2025, you might have to give up a second-round pick in next year's draft, another pick the year after. Who knows what the Niners are going to ask for if they can't get a first-round pick and Aiyuk does quietly quit on them and it is, or causes a big-time issue. So it's the assets you give up to get that player as well. So if Higgins walks into free agency next year, you're just paying him the schedule. For Aiyuk, you've got to do more. You've got to pay him and you got to give up the asset or assets. And that just, to me, doesn't make sense. Now, if it's a second-round pick for Aiyuk, I'm absolutely having a phone call and entertaining that, and I would do that. I would do that deal right now today. If it's next year's second-round pick and a mid-round pick, I'd have the conversation. Aiyuk in a later-round pick, I would entertain that, no doubt. But you've got to think about the cost. This also, not trading or acquiring a top-notch wide receiver, there is a silver lining to that. And the silver lining is that you're giving more opportunity to your young players, right? You're giving more opportunity to the guys that are in that room right now. You're giving opportunity to Pop Douglas. You're giving him all the targets, right? You're giving him all the targets that he wants. You see how he develops. How much can you get from him? So you're giving Pop Douglas opportunity. You're giving Jalen Polk opportunity. Maybe Polk proves himself to be a number 1. I don't think he's that guy. I think he's more of a 2. But I've been wrong before. I've been wrong plenty of times before. I'm not flawless. I'm not perfect. My track record is the track record. So maybe Polk proves to the world that he's actually an NFL number 1 wide receiver. You're giving him the opportunity to jump in and contribute big time right away. You're giving Javon Baker the opportunity to prove that he should have been drafted higher than the 4th round. And you're giving him a chance to shine during training camp, in the preseason, in joint practices, and during the regular season. So there is a silver lining. And there's an argument, and I would make the argument that instead of overpaying for somebody like Aiyuk and going crazy and giving up a first-round pick and paying them all sorts of money, just watch the young guys, see what you have. And then when you go into next offseason, you know how these guys slot, right? If Polk proves to be a number 2, he's a number 2 going into next offseason. If he surprises people and he looks like he could be a number 1, then maybe you might not need a number 1 next offseason. So you're giving the young guys that chance to prove themselves. I don't think that is a bad idea. And I think that works in your favor when you're talking about a rebuild and you're trying to focus on the next 2, 3, 4 years. So give Pop the chance. Give Polk the chance. Give Baker the chance. Give KJ Osborne a chance to prove that he might be better than what Minnesota thought he was. Give Kendrick Bourne an opportunity when he comes back from the ACL to prove that he can build off of what he was doing last year. Give these guys a chance. And, if the Niners are dead set on keeping Aiyuk, maybe you just have a better chance of going out and getting Aiyuk in 2025. Just because you don't acquire him right now doesn't mean you don't acquire him, period, end of sentence. You could acquire him next year. And it would be easier, I think, to acquire Aiyuk next season, whether he's on the franchise tag or he's not. Because if the Niners don't come to an agreement with Aiyuk this year, they're really up against it next year. And if they do franchise him with an eye towards dealing him, because I don't think they would want to handle Aiyuk back-to-back years being unhappy with the contract situation. If they do franchise Aiyuk with an eye towards trading him, now you know what your pick is. Now you don't have to guess. You don't have to play that game. You don't have to say, no, I won't give up a first-round pick because it's a top 5 pick. What happens if the Patriots shock the world? What happens if the Patriots are a 7-win team, 8-win team, 9-win team? Who knows? Maybe they shock us. I don't think it's likely, but anything is possible. What if they shock us and we're talking about a pick in the first round that is more 13, 14, 15 instead of 4, 5, 6? then you feel much better about trading that pick for Aiyuk, right? Maybe at that point next offseason with Aiyuk, they know he's not going back. They don't want him back. They don't want to deal with the stuff anymore. Maybe you can get him for that second-round pick next offseason instead of having to give up a first-round pick this season. So maybe it's easier, and I think it would be easier, and you'd have a better shot at landing Aiyuk because you know where your draft position is, which gives you more comfort in dealing picks. And don't worry about the money. Patriots have enough money. They have tons of money. They have over $100 million in cap space next offseason. They still have more than $40 million in cap space right now. So don't worry about the money. Aiyuk wants to get paid. The Patriots can pay him, whether it's right now or it's next offseason. And if Aiyuk causes a situation and gives Cincinnati a tough time, then you will have the option of Aiyuk or T. Higgins, right? Now you have two guys. You have two guys that are number one receivers. I like Aiyuk more than Higgins, but you have two guys who could walk into that wide receiver room and be your number one guy in 2025 for Drake May. And so now you have a choice of two. So I don't think it's the end of the world if you don't get it done. And I would not go crazy because of that. All right, let's jump into a couple of chats. Don't forget, you can jump to the front of the line with the super chat. You send the super chat, you jump to the front of the line, and of course, you help us financially. Also, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. If you like, maybe you even love the podcast, don't forget to hit that thumbs up when you're watching on YouTube. Don't forget to throw a comment in there as well. And subscriptions are big time for us, trying to get to 3,500. We're slowly getting there, so don't forget to subscribe and rate and review Spotify, Apple Pods. By the way, I'm back on 98.5 The Sports Hub tonight. I'm going to do a quick 30 minutes or so. Then we go to the Revs. And then after the Revs game, we come back for another hour and a half or so. So that's tonight. I'm also on 98.5 tomorrow night from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. So swing on by. All right, couple of chats here. Maryland, wide receiver room. Did you notice? I fixed the chat box. I fixed the font. I fixed the size of the chat. It's no longer taking up half the screen. I figured it out yesterday. Genius in StreamYard. Wide receiver room even more crowded after the news of Boutte. Lots of mid-level talent to choose from, but Aiyuk is at a different level. He is. Maryland, he is. Aiyuk's a top 10 receiver in the NFL. He's a bona fide number one. He's an ex-wide receiver. He's in his mid-20s. He's a great fit with this offense because he plays for Shanahan out in San Francisco. And there's a lot of similarities between the Shanahan offense and the Van Pelt offense. So there's no doubt. I love Brandon Aiyuk. I just don't want to pay the first-round pick. Talking second-round pick, all in. All in. I might even entertain a 2026 first-round pick and maybe like a second or third-round pick next year. I would more say third-round pick in 25 and maybe a first-round pick in 26. I might entertain that. I would also ask the Niners for a pick back, not in the top 2 or 3 rounds, but I would certainly ask for a pick back in that kind of deal. But I'm not giving up the 2025 first-round pick. It's too rich for my blood to go along with the money. I'm out. But there's no denying that Aiyuk is at a different level than the guys the Patriots have right now in that room. And I've talked about it, and you know you've been with us really since day one. I appreciate you. Wide receiver room is better for the Patriots this year than it was last year, but they still have really, a 2 through 5 group, right? I'm talking about the depth of this group. I'm talking about the number 2 receiver to the number 5 receiver. They improved. I still would love for them to go out there and get a true number 1. And obviously they feel the same way. They're admitting, Elliott Wolf is admitting that they don't have a true number 1 when he's still calling the Niners about Aiyuk. He's admitting to all of us. They know, they're aware, they need a wide receiver 1, and that's why he's placing these phone calls. Michael Skinner jumps in. Good morning, Nick, and fellow Patriots fans from Florida. Hopefully you're enjoying Florida down there, Michael. Of course, the weather up here in New England has felt like Florida. Been brutal with the humidity. 5-piece poet, not giving up no first-round pick, bro. I agree with you, 5-piece poet. I agree with you, my friend. All right, so let's get to Kayshon Boutte, shall we? Because we got the news yesterday. So ESPN reported, Adam Schefter, Mike Reese, that Louisiana has decided to drop the underage gambling and computer fraud charges against Boutte. No explanation as to why. That was interesting. We don't know why they decided to drop the charges, but they just decided to drop the charges, so it is what it is. The NFL could still punish Boutte, okay? Let's not forget that. Some people think, oh, well, the charges were dropped, so he's free of any punishment. Not necessarily. The NFL can still punish Kayshon Boutte. I went through this last night on 98.5, but I know not all of you watch or listen to 98.5 when I'm on there. So let me kind of cover the ground right now quickly. The NFL can still punish Boutte depending on the details. Now, one thing is you are not allowed to bet on the NFL if you're in the NFL, if you are an NFL player. And we know due to the documents and the investigation that Boutte, he was betting on sports up until early May of 2023. So that means he was betting on sports while he was a Patriot. He had already been drafted. He was drafted into the league, and he was gambling. So that fits one of the criteria. So we know that much. A couple of things we don't know. Did Boutte have any bets related to the NFL? I have not seen that reported. What has been reported is that he was betting on college football and that he especially bet on his own team. He bet on LSU more than a handful of times. So we know he was betting on LSU. We know he was betting on college football, but we don't know if he was betting on the NFL. When you're an NFL player, you can bet on other sports. You're allowed to bet on other sports. If Drake May wanted to put a bet on the Celtics next year, he put a Celtics future bet in there, he can do that. The NFL doesn't punish you for that. That's okay. That's within the rules. So we don't know if Boutte was betting on the NFL. If he was betting on the NFL during that first week or so of May, that's a problem. That's a big problem. The other thing is that even if you're betting on other sports, let's say that Drake May puts that bet in on the Celtics. If he places that bet at an NFL facility or quote-unquote venue, that's also a no-no. So we have to figure out those details. We know that Boutte bet after he was drafted. Did he bet on the NFL? Did he not bet on the NFL? And if he bet on other sports and he didn't touch the NFL, but he bet on other sports while he was at Gillette Stadium, while he was in the facility, the NFL can punish him for that. So those are the details that we need to figure out. We need to know what actually happened. And until we have those details, we don't know what the NFL is going to do. We know the NFL is very cognizant of gambling, and they don't want the integrity of the league, quote unquote, to be questioned because of gambling by players. So if there is evidence that Boutte bet on the NFL or that he bet on other sports at an NFL venue or facility, he's going to get punished. I'd be shocked if the NFL found out that information. I would be absolutely shocked if he wasn't suspended for at least a game or a couple of games or a few games. But we don't know the details. If he bet on other sports away from the facility and venue, if he didn't bet on the NFL, then he's pretty much good to go. And I don't think the NFL would punish him. But those are the details that we don't know. And the NFL gave a statement to Mike Reese yesterday. It was pretty much a nothing statement, a big nothing burger. They're looking into it. They're aware of the situation, blah, 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 blah. Now, here's the part of it. Outside of, Boutte and the gambling, this opens the door. This opens the door for Boutte. How can you not laugh at these puns, these inadvertent puns because of his last name? It was so much easier when we first thought his last name was Boutte. If Boutte proves himself, it's interesting, right? Because let's say Boutte had a good minicamp. When I was there, the second minicamp practice on that Wednesday, I went to practice, and Boutte was really good. He was one of the best players on the field that day. Had a couple of touchdown catches. He looked really good. He's had really good stretches. He had really good stretches, early on last year, right? He had some moments. He showed some flashes during camp season and during the preseason. He had the one catch against, I think it was Green Bay, the slant route that he took to the house and everybody got excited. But he did show some flashes during camp last year, and he showed some flashes at minicamp. So now if this gambling thing is behind him and the NFL doesn't punish him, and really the for all intents and purposes, the gambling thing is behind him, right? Because the biggest issue for him, the biggest danger was that he would get into legal trouble. He would be convicted and he'd have to deal with that situation, right? So that's behind him. I don't think his punishment would be an egregious punishment by the NFL. I don't think it would be. Again, depending on the details, and we don't know all of the details, but I would think that they wouldn't lay the hammer down on him because he was only betting for 1 week after being drafted. So I don't think it's going to be a 6-game suspension, 8-game suspension. So now we look at Boutte and we say, what can he do, right? What can he do to prove himself? And if he proves himself, what's that mean for this football team? Well, it means that you have young pieces. It means that, you have young pieces in the room that you could be excited about. You've got Drake May, a future QB1, right? Your future franchise quarterback, maybe sooner rather than later. You've got the quarterback. And then you look at the receivers, and you've got some young, exciting pieces, some possibilities there, right? Pop Douglas, very confident. As long as he stays healthy, Pop Douglas is going to be a good NFL player. He's not going to be a number 1 guy, I don't think, but he's going to be a really good 2/3 kind of guy, right? So you've got May, you've got Pop Douglas. I'm high on Jalen Polk. You know that. So you know that Jalen Polk, to me, is somebody who's going to contribute right away to this football team. I don't think it's crazy to think that he gets 45 to 50 catches this year. So I like Jalen Polk. So now you've got May, you've got Pop, and you've got Polk. Then you look at Javon Baker. Does one of Javon Baker or Boutte hit? If one of those two guys hit, now you've got May, you've got Pop, you've got Polk, and you've got one of those two guys. And I'm still keeping an eye on Jaheim Bell. I did a Patreon podcast going back several weeks ago talking about Jaheim Bell and how he could be an overlooked secret weapon for this offense this year. I'm still looking at Jaheim Bell and think that he can contribute. Now, is he going to catch 40 footballs? I don't think so. But can he be a piece of this offense and be productive? I do think so. So now you start to think, right? If you get two guys, even if you get one guy out of Baker, Boutte, and Bell, the 3 Bs, even if you get one of them to work out, one of those guys show out, now you've got May, you've got Pop, you've got Polk, and you've got one of those 3 guys. And now you kind of add and you think about it. You've got the steady vets to help. You've got Kendrick Bourne and KJ Osborne. You know, you figure those older guys, those vets can help out the young guys. But there's a possibility here, okay? If you're Elliott Wolf and you don't land the big fish in Aiyuk this offseason, San Francisco holds on to him. There is the possibility that you could be looking at this wide receiver group going into 2025, and you could be looking at T. Higgins, maybe even Aiyuk, but let's just say it's T. Higgins. You have T. Higgins as your number 1. You have Jalen Polk as your number 2. You have Pop Douglas as your slot guy, your number 3. You have Kendrick Bourne, Javon Baker, and Kayshon Boutte. Those are your 6 wide receivers. That ain't bad. That ain't bad at all. If you're telling me that Drake May walks into 2025 with Higgins, Polk, Pop, Bourne, Baker, and Boutte, and Baker and Boutte have proven that they can be NFL receivers, even if not, top 2 or 3 guys, they've proven they deserve to be on rosters. That's a young, exciting group of wide receivers to help your young, electric quarterback of the future. And that's how you start to build. And that's why we call it a rebuild. All right. I appreciate every single one of you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, rate and review if you're on Spotify, Apple Pods. I will be back on Friday at 11 a.m. sharp here on YouTube. I will talk to you then, and I'll also talk to you on 98.5 tonight and tomorrow night. Tonight, you got 7 to 7:30-ish, then 9:30-ish to 11, and then tomorrow night, back on 98.5, 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. I appreciate every single one of you and your support. Let's continue to build this channel, build this community. Talk to you on Friday.